herbivore species. The mortalities have risen because of the depletion of food resources and as well as water shortages.
The Kenyan Tourism and Wildlife Minister said authorities were dropping off hay for the animals. The ministry warned in a report unveiled Friday that the figures released were likely far from comprehensive, as some carnivores could have devoured some carcasses.
Crossing over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, foreign ministers from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda met in the Angola capital for talks aimed at easing rising tensions between Kinshasa and Kigali. Recently, tensions have been particularly high between Kinshasa and Kigali since the resurgence of the March 23 movement, popularly known as the M23, late last year.
Foreign Minister from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda arrived at the Angolan presidency on Saturday for a first round of diplomatic talks amid rising tensions in the eastern DRC. The Angolan president, João Lourenço, was appointed by the African Union as a mediator for the talks between the DRC's Christopher Lutunda and Vincent Biruta from Rwanda. Tensions have been particularly high between Kinshasa and Kigali since the resurgence of the March 23 movement, known as the M23, late last year. The former Tutsi rebellion group took up accusing Kinshasa of failing to respect the agreement on the demobilization of its fighters. Kinshasa accuses Rwanda of supporting this rebellion, a claim Kigali systematically denies. But the eastern DRC region has been plagued for nearly 3 decades by violence from armed groups, many of them born out of wars that occurred there in the wake of the 1994 Rwanda genocide. Efforts have already been made in Rwanda to try and normalize relations between the two neighbors in July. According to the United Nations, the fighting between the FARDC and the M23 has displaced some 50,000 people since the 20th of October, of whom 12,000 have taken refuge in Uganda.
Crossing back to Kenya, Kenya's worst drought in 4 decades has wreaked havoc on wildlife. Now, the wildlife minister presented on Friday the findings, and sadly, this has impacted on the current drought on the wildlife, and Kenya is mostly a country that lives with wildlife. Kenya's worst drought in 4 decades is wreaking havoc on wildlife. The wildlife minister presented on the 4th of November key findings of a new report entitled The Impact of the Current Drought on the Wildlife in Kenya. Sadly, the crisis has affected nearly half of the East African nation's 8 provinces, leaving humans and beasts very few food sources. Speaking at a press conference on Friday, the Tourism and Wildlife Minister gave details on the high mortality rate of wildlife. The Amboseli and Laikipia Sambo region south, which are home to tourist safaris, record more than 70 elephant deaths. Some species like gravy zebras, which are listed as endangered on the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List, were badly hit. 4 consecutive rainy seasons have failed in the Horn of Africa, driving Kenyan families and wildlife on the brink of famine. Kenyan Tourism and Wildlife Minister said authorities were dropping off hay for the animals. The ministry warned in a report unveiled on Friday that the figures released were likely far from comprehensive, as some carnivores could have devoured some carcass. Scores of other wildlife have died since February as Kenya battles its worst drought in 40 years. The drought has killed 205 elephants between February and October in Kenya wildlife reserves. Kenya recorded the death of 512 gnolls, 381 zebras, 12 giraffes, and 51 buffaloes in the same period.
Friday. The drought has resulted in the deaths of the following species of wildlife. Wildebeest, we've lost a total of 512 animals. Common zebra, we've lost a total of 381. Our elephants, we've lost a total of 205.
Officials say more than 500,000 people in the northern Kenyan region of Turkana are facing starvation, largely due to a lack of rainfall over 4 seasons. Home to a large elephant population, northern and southern parts of Kenya have been most affected by the drought. The charity Save the Elephants reported last month the death of a famed calf that was known for being a twin, a rarity for elephants during the drought. Extreme climate conditions also killed more than 40 rare and endangered Grevy's zebras in Kenya in just 3 months, according to conservation group Grevy's Zebra Trust. Sporadic rainfall has finally started in East Africa, but authorities expect below average precipitation in the coming months. Kenya's wildlife is a major tourist attraction. Tourism brings about 10% of the country's economic output and employs over 2 million people. Scientists say droughts are becoming more severe and long-lasting as a result of climate change, which is caused by the continued use of fossil fuels. Crossing over to Ghana, hundreds of thousands of Ghanaians gathered on Saturday to demand the resignation of President Nana Akufo-Addo and his vice, Dr. Mahamudu Bamwai. Now, the rally took place at the Obra Square located in the Kwame Nkrumah Intelligence Circle in Kumasi. They were talking about the fact he needs to resign. That was the slogan of this demonstration. More information in the following report. Hundreds of Ghanaians mobilized on Saturday, the 5th of November, to demonstrate against the unprecedented economic crisis in Ghana and demand the resignation of President Nana Akufo-Addo and Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. The rally took place at the Obra Square located at the Kwame Nkrumah Interchange Circle in Kumasi. The placards read, "2 years is too long to endure this situation. Resign or be impeached." The reloaded version of the Kumi Preko meaning Kill Me Now demonstration is the initiative of a renowned lawyer, Martin Kpebu, just like the manifestation of the Kumi Preko organized by President Nana Akufo-Addo before he became the Ghanaian president. Citing the 1992 Constitution, Mr. Kpebu said the president should submit his letter of resignation to the Speaker of Parliament and do the needful. According to him, President Nana Akufo-Addo will not be the first president in Ghanaian history to resign, hence the need for him to do so and save his name. The president on his part had responded to the call for resignation by saying Ghanaians have given him the mandate to govern and solve the country's problem, and he will not resign but rather fight to find solutions to the current challenges facing the citizens of Ghana. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo sought to reassure the population about the economic crisis in a speech on Sunday evening, the 30th of October.
In fact, in the last quarter of 2021, our economy grew at 7%, only for the Russian invasion of Ukraine in the first quarter of this year to aggravate the effects of COVID-19 and plunge the global economy to even greater turmoil from which it has not yet recovered. The whole world has been taken aback by the speed with which inflation has eaten away people's incomes. Economies, big and small, have experienced over this year alone the highest rise in cost of living over a generation, the highest rise in government borrowing in over 50 years, the highest rise in inflation for 40 years, the steepest depreciation in their currencies to the US dollar over the last 30 years, the fastest peak in interest rates for over 20 years, and the greatest threat of unemployment in peacetime, with over 100 million people being pushed into extreme poverty. Between the end of 2019 and now, inflation in Ghana has increased by 5-fold. Indeed, some steps have been taken to restore order in the foreign exchange markets, and we're already beginning to see some calm returning. We will not relent until order is completely restored. The following actions have been taken thus far. 1. Enhanced supervisory action by the Bank of Ghana in the Forex Bureau markets and the black market to flush out illegal operators, as well as ensuring that those permitted to operate legally abide by the market rules. Already, some forest bureaus have had their licenses revoked, and this exercise will continue until complete order is restored in the sector. 2, fresh inflows of dollars are providing liquidity to the foreign exchange market and addressing the pipeline demand. 3, the Bank of Ghana has given its full commitment to the commercial banks to provide liquidity to ensure the wheels of the economy continue to run in a stabilized manner till the IMF program kicks in and the financing assurances expected from other partners also come in. 4, government is working with the Bank of Ghana and the oil producing and mining companies to introduce a new legal and regulatory framework to ensure that all foreign exchange and from operations in Ghana are initially paid to banks domiciled in Ghana to help boost the domestic foreign exchange market. And 5, the Bank of Ghana will continue and enhance its gold purchase program. I'm confident that these immediate measures designed to change the structure of our balance of payment flows, sanitize the foreign exchange market to ensure that the banks and Forex Bureau operate along international best practices, together with strengthened supervision, will go a long way to sanitize our foreign exchange market and make it more resilient against external vulnerabilities going forward.
Faced with record inflation and collapse of the national currency, he promised to put order in the markets to counter the depreciation of the Ghana cedis. He affirmed his willingness to support local production and to reduce dependence on imported products. The President urged the population to support his decision to seek a loan from the International Monetary Fund, a speech that did not really convince the populace. In a half-hour speech broadcasted on Sunday, the 30th of October, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo addressed the nation, explaining the raft of measures his government will be taking to see its way out of the financial turmoil, including measures to support domestic production. Inflation in Ghana is rising to over 37%, while the currency is depreciating at an unforeseen pace. Since the beginning of the year, the cedi has lost over 40% against the dollar. Most importantly, debt, which is the Achilles heel of the Ghanaian economy, has soared. Debt now accounts for nearly 80% of the country's gross domestic product. This is an insurmountable burden that has compelled the Ghanaian government to break with its 3-year strike from demanding aid from the International Monetary Fund. Sadly, this is the 17th request to the International Monetary Fund for a new aid plan since the country's independence in 1957. Still on the subject on the rally that took place at the Obra Square located at the Kwame Nkrumah Interchange Circle in Kumasi, Ghanaians are asking their president and his vice to resign considering the high standard of living right now and also the fall of the Ghanaian cedi. Now, Golfe TV Africa had a chat with our correspondent in Ghana, Asamoah Wilfred, and he gives us more information on the situation of things in Ghana, the way the citizens are responding. Stay tuned.
Hundreds of Ghanaians mobilized on Saturday to demonstrate against the unprecedented economic crisis of Ghana and demand the resignation of President Akufo-Addo and Vice President Dr. Metohuey. The rally took place at the Obra Square located in Kwame Nkrumah Interchange Circle in Kumasi. The two placards read 2 years as too long to endure the situation, resign or be impeached. Cited the 1992 Constitution, Mr. Pebo said the president should submit his Hundreds of Ghanaians mobilized Saturday to demonstrate against the unprecedented economic crisis of Ghana and demand resignation of President Nana Akufo-Addo and his Vice President Dr. Metohuey. The rally took place at the Obra Square located at the Kwame Nkrumah Interchange Circle. The placards read 2 years is too long to endure the situation, resign or be impeached. Cited the 1992 Constitution, Mr. Pebo said the President should submit his letter of resignation to the Speaker of Parliament and do the needful. According to him, The President Akufo-Addo will not be Ghana's first president to resign, hence the need for him to do so and save his name. The president on his part had to respond to the call for the resignation by Ghanaians, had given him the mandate to govern and solve the country's problems, and he would not resign, but rather fight to find the solutions to the current challenges facing his citizens. We have Golfe TV correspondent Wilfred Menohuey is live on ground to bring us the story. Good afternoon, Wilfred. How are you? And thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Metohuey. ADOGLO, I'm doing very fine, and thanks for having me on Golfe TV Africa.
My pleasure. Now we'll go very quick. Now, what was the purpose of Saturday? What was the purpose of Saturday's demonstration?
Okay. Actually, the purpose for this Saturday's demonstration is for Ghanaians to decry the hardship that they are going through. Currently, the country is going through economic difficulties, and the prices of fuel keep increasing on daily basis. The price of foodstuffs keep increasing on daily basis, making the living condition of Ghanaians very difficult to the extent that people are finding it very difficult to feed themselves on daily basis. For this reason, they have decided to come together to demonstrate to demonstrate against the president of the country, calling on the president to put measures in place to see to it their living conditions to be improved upon. So on this particular Saturday, several Ghanaians gathered at the Kwame Nkrumah interchange to demonstrate against the government. So from Kwame Nkrumah interchange, the demonstrators walked throughout Kwame Nkrumah interchange to the Opera Square, to the Independence Square, which is also known as the Blaster Square, to make their complaints known to the president, because nothing is working currently. As I'm talking to you, every day prices of goods and services are increasing. If you bought a trotro, which is the public transport known as trotro, if you bought a trotro today at a fare of, let's say, 50 pesos today, by the time you go tomorrow, it may be increased to 20 pesos, to the extent that recently, I think that was just last week, a passenger bought trotro knowing very well that the fare was a particular amount. And when he got into the trotro, the maid told him that he has to pay an extra amount, which he refused to pay. And because of this, they started arguing among themselves. They came out of the car, and in the course of fighting, the trotro guy gave one punch to the passenger. He fell on the floor, and that was the end. He lost his life because of what? 20 pesos. So the situation is becoming very difficult for Ghanaians to the extent that if nothing is done about it, where the country is getting to will be very difficult for Ghanaians.
Now, how bad is the current economic? I mean, you've explained how bad the current economic situation is. Now, also taking into account the IMF aid the President Akufo-Addo has requested, is the aid from the IMF a reliable solution?
Well, for the president, it's a reliable solution, but many Ghanaians feel it's not a reliable solution, because if a country is in an economic crisis, it's true we need more money in the system, but what, as a good leader, what one has to put into practice is, you ask yourself, what am I doing that is not right? What am I supposed to do right for things to change? Currently, the current government has several ministers, some ministries that are not important, and the president has been called upon to reduce his government. Till today, he's doing nothing about it. Also, the president drives about more than 30 V8 vehicles around whenever he's going through the country, fueling all these vehicles, and one of the vehicles carries his chair, the chair that you sit on, going around the country whenever he's traveling. And this is making things very difficult for Ghanaians. Ghanaians are not having food to eat, but the president has set aside a car that carries the chair that you sit on wherever he travels throughout the country. And this cannot be understood. The IMF, yes, the money they can go to the IMF and get money into the system. But how far would this go if the government is not taking measures within the country that will see to the changes that Ghanaians are calling for? So yes, it will work at the same time, and it will not work.
Now, the question everyone is asking outside Ghana is Akufo-Addo to blame? Now, is Akufo-Addo to blame? Sure, we know a lot of Ghanaians believe Akufo-Addo is to blame. But is this unanimous in Ghana, or is this still split along party borders?
Yeah. Let me remind you that the situation that is currently happening in Ghana is felt by every Ghanaian, even members of the government, to the extent that about a week ago, we have in parliament, the ruling party has 137 members of parliament, and the opposition also has 137 members in parliament. Out of the 137 members of parliament for the ruling party, which is the New Patriotic Party, NPP, 80 of them came up recently calling on the government to sack the finance minister because they feel the finance minister is not putting adequate measures in place to see to it that the economy is brought back on track. But since the president feels the finance minister can Ofori-Atta is his cousin, and for that reason he cannot sack him, it kept maintaining in that position. So it's something that is felt by everybody that the president has a hand in this situation. The president has a hand in it in the essence that he's not doing anything that Ghanaians are expecting of him to do to change the situation.
So lastly, very quickly, what options does the president have? Resign or be impeached? Which do you think he would go for?
Actually, to me, I don't think the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, is going for any of these options. The two options are on the table. He either resigns or he gets impeached. He's not ready for any of them. He's not ready for any of them. Again?
So will he be impeached if
I didn't hear you right.
Resign is not on the table? Is impeachment the only solution? Will he be impeached? Can he be impeached?
Yes, he can be impeached. And even some Ghanaians feel that because on the demonstrative ground on Saturday, few participants that I spoke with are of the mind that even the NDC, which is the opposition party, is not playing a key role to see to the government gets impeached or resigns, because they feel both of them have equal number of members of parliament in the house. For that reason, they have equal powers. And even recently, about 80 of the MPP members of parliament are calling on the president to sack his finance minister. That means they are also of the opinion that something should be done. So if the opposition, that is the National Democratic Congress and the MPP guys, can come together, the president can easily be impeached. But who knows? Even these 80 members of parliament that recently called for the sacking of the finance minister, when after coming up to make the conference, the president called them into the presidential palace and spoke with them. After speaking with them, they changed their mind. Who knows? Has he given them something to make them to change their mind? These members of parliament, are they really there to fight for the people, or they are there to fight for their personal interest? So we are not very sure if the members of parliament will see to that the president gets impeached.
All right, thank you, Winfred Menohuey, for your contribution to this edition of All News. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
The pleasure is mine, Metohuey ADOGLO, and my...
Thank you so much, and that was Asamoah giving us updates. And of course, Metohuey ADOGLO, thank you for the interesting conversation with our correspondent, Wilfred Asamoah.
Yeah, it was quite something, because, you know, everybody in the African, especially in Africa, all bothered about the situation in Ghana. Is shocking, because
you know, the whole of the Ghana city is really
especially because as Nigerians, you know, there was this competition between Nigerians and Ghanaians that say our cities is doing well, our cities is working, our currency is booming and all that, and we really recognize the cedi for its strength back then. So it comes as a shocker to see it's plunged the way it has plunged, and especially with the fact that it's all down to the policies the new government has made, Nana Akufo-Addo. And you know, we cannot mistake the fact that they've had very bad policies, and they are spending so much,
and
especially
they are borrowing so much from the International Monetary Fund.
And like Nigeria, they believe borrowing more is a solution,
rather than moving into production, fabricating your local goods and services,
and being able to make a proper scale of preference, priorities. They have so much ministries. Ghanaians are talking about the ministry. They have a ministry for almost everything. They have a ministry for cooking. They have a ministry for dishes. You know, you have to make a proper scale of preference and say, okay, this is what we need. This is what we need.
Priority at this point in time.
Do not have ministries, so much ministries that you cannot even afford. And there's also a story, I don't know how true the story is, but the story about how he has a car that moves his chair. You know how much money, how much petrol that car would cost? You have to pay the petrol for that car. You have to pay the driver for that car. That service alone, a whole lot. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite astonishing and very sad. And it was good. Someone could help us, you know, give us the context of what's happening. He talked about the guy that got thrown off the bus over 20 pesos. So it's very, very sad.
Very disheartening. All right, now so I'm going to hand over to Metohuey ADOGLO to lead us to the next segment, which is the newspaper review.
All right, now for more stories across the African continent, we head into the African newspaper review. We start off the paper with papers coming in from Nigeria. Now let's start on the front page. The front page of the Nation, Nigeria reveals another governor threatens to quit Atiku campaign. Bala Mohammed, PDP presidential candidate, working against my re-election. Wike marking the orders to sustain opposition against ex-VP Alton Blast Atiku. Still having problem at home.
You know, at the end of the day, you just find out that there are some problems, there are some challenges that when you do not solve, they will never go away. PDP has internal crisis, and definitely it is bound to cause catastrophe in the political arena and the People's Democratic Party. So this simply means when we have challenges, you don't need to overlook them. You need to nip them in the bud because they could bring your house falling down.
You know, I feel Tinubu is happy with this.
Yes.
The obedience.
I'm so
Also,
because, you know, it's really, really slimming the chances of PDP.
Exactly.
Fingers crossed.
All right, fingers crossed. Now, also, CBN's digital currency yet to gain traction. Now, the CBN has put up its own digital currency, but yet it's yet to gain traction. And talking about the CBN, every Nigerian was aware what happened through this last week, in which the CBN governor, Emefiele, came out to say he's going to be changing the color of Naira. So we're going to have new bank notes for the Naira. And what does this mean? It means that if you are keeping cash at home, you have to bring your cash back and change, or else you will not be able to spend that money.
Do you understand?
And then they said billions and billions of Nairas were being pushed into the banks.
Do you understand? Because at the end of the day, when I read the news about the CBN bringing in new currency and they give a deadline till January that if you do not bring in all the Naira you have and you're bringing the old Naira, your old Naira will literally lose value. And then I kept on asking myself, I said, okay, first of all, I don't understand. To me, it just really sounded like a despotic decision because it wasn't like the House of Parliament or the members of the legislative or the Senate, they started to talk about it. The only thing we just saw was the announcement. And then I still kept on asking myself that, is this the problem to the challenges in Nigeria?
Sure.
But then an economist took his time to explain to me and said at the end of the day, when you make new Naira bills, people that have been hoarding money will send it to the bank.
Exactly.
And this will make money to flow and stabilize the economy. So people that have been hoarding money for elections, bullion vans that is funding calls, to stabilize the economy. And I said, oh wow, I didn't think about it like that. Then it's a good deal.
Because you see, the Naira keeps dropping. The Naira is at 750 now. These guys are keeping billions in their home. What does that mean? This billions is not circulating. People are not getting paid.
Yeah.
But if that money is in the bank can invest with the money.
True.
And when the bank invests, it means startups get money. It means hubs get money. It means people get paid. But when you keep all those billions,
it's just touched up. The money is not circulating.
Naira will keep falling. And it was genius of Emefiele to come up with. And you know, this is not the first time it's happened. It's also happened during the military era. I can't remember exactly which of the ruling military leader in that time. But there was a whole horde. People were hoarding cash,
Naira,
and he came out and said, "You know what? We're changing the color." People were hiding money, and then he said, if you bring out more than so amount of money, you have to explain how you got this money. So now this is something that's going to happen. Why are you keeping billions of Naira in your accounts, in your house? And if you see some of the papers were very, broken apart in such a state, it meant this money had been there, and it's bad because Nigeria doesn't have high currencies. We have 1,000.
Yeah.
So you can't. It's not like Benin. You have 10,000. Benin, literally, if you have 10,000, you can have 1 million, and you have 1 million
then you just
in a
have
finger.
a small stash.
But in Nigeria, 1 million in cash is.
It's like a Ghana must go back.
Exactly. So why are they keeping this money if this money is legal? It means this money it comes from
ill-gotten.
Exactly. So yeah, whoever told you that was very, he understood exactly what he was saying, and this would help. I mean, if this is one of the best, in my opinion, Emefiele has done since his term as CBN's president, governor rather. All right, moving on from that, we talk about 2 Pakistans held for cocaine and snuck through trafficking. We have that on page 12. We have a picture of them just right there, cocaine traffickers, and also the picture of the goods, the merchandise right there. So looking at the top hand of the paper, it says dollar scarcity worsens, petrol supply says marketers. We have that on page 5. Also looking at COP27, Buhari world leaders tackle climate. I don't know. Buhari has always been about climate change. I understand that Nigeria is going through a whole lot of flooding in the country. But if you ask me my opinion, the flooding Nigeria is going through is it's as a result of climate change. But it is also as a result of Nigeria's incompetence and negligence in infrastructure projects. Yeah. We do not have proper infrastructure. Nigerians do not have proper. Nigerians do not have proper infrastructure projects, and so when something like this comes along, climate change, there is no proper response. There's no buffer. Exactly. There's no buffer to help. You know, there's this island. There's this place in Switzerland. It's an island, not an island nation, but it's covered by water. And there's so much rivers. I think it's the country with the most rivers in the world. So much rivers. And there's a period in time where the high rise and the water climbs.
Yes.
The way they built their bridges.
In such a way that it would not cause an elopement of the water.
Perfect. You took it out of my mouth.
Yeah,
that is taking out infrastructure and looking to the future. Say, climate change or no climate change, I will protect my people.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now he comes out to say climate change like as if the whole problem is on climate change. No, that's a deflection. It's on his government for not providing the proper infrastructure to the regions that are currently.
Yeah.
If it's a flood now, we know if it's a drought, that we understand.
That's another thing. But then another flip side of it is the fact that the Nigerian president has not taken out time to go and visit the victims of flood.
He's too ill for that.
Do you understand?
He's too ill for that. He's back. He's headed back to London.
It's really, really sad because at the end of the day, you see people that are campaigning for presidency are going out to talk out, to mourn with those that mourn.
And even give money.
People lost their
pretentious
lives,
money,
lost their property, lost a whole lot of things, and you're like, what will your country do for you? So it's really, really a farce.
No, he'll say, not what you can do for your country. It's not what your country can do for you. It's what you can do for your country.
Fingers crossed.
That should be pointed at him himself. So when he comes down and talks about COP27 and climate change, that is just so pretentious and is a huge hypocrisy.
Every country has their priorities. So I basically think climate change is a priority of the Nigerian president. So we're not going to hang him for it.
Okay, yeah, just go there. I'll take your advice on that one. Moving on to the next part of the edition as we touch on the Daily Guide Ghana. The front page of the Daily Guide Ghana reveals, trust me to turn economy around. Ofori Atta, page 3. I don't think Ghanaians believe him so much, because if they did believe him, they would not be going on so much rallies and protests currently. And I'm moving on from that. Ex-Beige CEO charged for stealing over 1.2 billion Ghana cedis. That is a lot of money. Also, Ashanti's heirs not enemies to Otumfor. That is on page 6. Ignore Kevin Stiller's mad ranting. We have that on page 7 of the Daily Guide Ghana. Moving on from Daily Guide Ghana, we head now to the Guardian Post Daily from Cameroon. Now, the front page of the Guardian reveals the Guardian Sports is here with the birth of its sports edition to be published on Saturday. We have that there on page 7. Also, Cameroon sinks Ethiopia qualifies for knockout stages. This is for the AFCON 2021. On top of the basic customs of preparation ahead of World Customs. Then we have that on page 3 of the Guardian Post. Moving on from the Guardian Post, head to the next part of the as we touch on the front page Liberia. The front page Liberia reveals our early conflict indicators. Where's administration long roads back to MTC compact? We have that on page 7. And a whole host of economical activities going on in Liberia. Moving on from Liberia, we head now to the next revelation as we touch on the Daily News Zimbabwe. The Daily News Zimbabwe reveals CCC cracks up 2023 campaign as party pushes its top cast to ramp up their voters' mobilization. We have Chamiza. You remember Chamiza? Mm-hmm. Chamiza was the lawyer that I think every West African loved. We loved Chamiza. Yes, the way he spoke, he had charisma.
He was very eloquent.
He signified the future for Cameroonians. And it was very sad to see him lose out on the election to Emerson Mnangagwa. But yeah, Emerson Mnangagwa is no small person. He's a long-time person. He's there with Mugabe.
He's old in the game. He's big in the game.
He has roots deeper than Chamiza. So yeah, as the elections about to come up again, Chamiza is out again, and he's going to try and fight for the presidency.
At the end of the day, consistency is the name of the game. Don't give up. Because in Africa, there's nothing like if you contest for 5 or 10 years, you're going to stop or be disqualified. No, you have the opportunity to keep contesting. If you believe in the just cause and you believe that you're truly going to bring a change, then I think you should keep knocking.
Buhari is the example.
Exactly.
Where is the example? Did you know how many times Buhari came out from?
Yeah, he did.
And this is the example Atiku has taken to heart.
Exactly.
Atiku, this is about his.
Talk about persistence. Atiku is another example.
All right. Also, launch Zim satellite delay. The Zimbabweans are trying to launch a satellite into the stratosphere, and that particular operation has been delayed. Why? You can get that on page 2 of the Daily News Zimbabwe. Well, here's all we have for you for the African newspaper review on Golfe TV Africa. Hand over back to you, Hazel.
Thank you so much, Metohuey ADOGLO. And our dear viewers, this is where we come to the end of today's news edition, coming to you live and direct from Golfe TV Africa here in the city of Cotonou. But before we close, here's a recap of our top stories. We saw that Benin is taking another important step towards achieving. Also, the Kenyan Wildlife
Wildlife Minister presented a new report on the hardship of the current drought inflicted on its wildlife.
We also saw that foreign ministers from DRC and Rwanda met in Angola capital for talks aimed at easing rising tensions between Kinshasa and Kigali. Meto?
Well, that's all we have for you for this edition of the 1 p.m. English News on Golfe TV Africa. Metohuey, I know she just said that, but I'll repeat it all the same.
And I'm Hazel OGOIGBE. Thanks for tuning in. Have a splendid afternoon.
Ciao.